How does a quiet man, dismissed as simple and compliant, turn the tables on a wife who thought she could steal everything and walk away smiling? The night she slid those documents across the table, she believed she had won. The next morning, her scream echoed through the house, because I had prepared for her betrayal, and the truth was about to end her family's free ride forever. The fluorescent light in my garage workshop flickered as I bent over the engine compartment of truck number 4, my hands black with grease and my back aching from another 16-hour day. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m., and I could hear Lorraine's car pulling into the driveway. She'd been handling the books again, her favorite excuse for spending evenings away from home while I did the real work that kept our ice cream business running. Warren Hollis, that's me, 53 years old, and I've been fixing things with my hands since I was 12. What started as a single converted ice cream truck 5 years ago had grown into a fleet of 6 custom vehicles that dominated the busiest spots in downtown Phoenix. Every truck had been personally modified by me. Upgraded refrigeration systems, custom storage compartments, reinforced chassis to handle the Arizona heat, and constant stop-and-go driving. I knew every bolt, every wire, every quirk of these machines. The kitchen door slammed as Lorraine entered the house. I wiped my hands on an old rag and followed her inside, hoping maybe tonight would be different. Maybe she'd ask about my day, show some interest in the technical challenges I'd solved, or at least acknowledge that I existed. "How did the numbers look today?" I asked, settling into my usual chair at our small dining table. Lorraine was already at the refrigerator, her back to me, pulling out a bottle of wine. "Fine, Warren. Same as always." Her voice carried that familiar tone of mild irritation, as if my questions were an inconvenience. "We live simply, that's enough." That phrase again. "We live simply, that's enough." She'd been saying it for months whenever I brought up money, profits, or the future of the business. Meanwhile, I'd been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch because our personal account was always running low. "I noticed Truck 3's refrigeration unit is acting up again," I continued, trying to engage her in conversation about our business. "Might need to replace the compressor. That's about $800, but if we don't fix it soon—" "Warren." She turned around, wineglass in hand, and fixed me with that look, the one that made me feel like a child interrupting adult conversation. "I handle the finances. You handle the trucks. That's how this works." Lorraine Hollis, née Connolly, 48 years old and still beautiful in that sharp, controlled way that had first attracted me 15 years ago. She had auburn hair that she kept perfectly styled, green eyes that could charm customers and freeze me in place with equal effectiveness, and a smile that never quite reached those eyes when she looked at me anymore. The next morning, I was back in the garage by 6 a.m., performing routine maintenance on Truck 2. The familiar ritual of checking fluid levels, testing electrical connections, and inspecting tires helped calm my mind. This was my domain, the place where I felt competent and valued. Each truck represented hundreds of hours of careful work, problem-solving, and innovation. Around 8:30, I heard footsteps on the concrete floor. Curtis Connolly, Lorraine's younger brother, strolled into the garage wearing a new leather jacket that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. "Morning, Warren," Curtis said, his tone carrying that particular brand of condescension I'd grown accustomed to from Lorraine's family. "Still playing with your toys, I see?" Curtis was 44, unemployed for the past 2 years, and had a talent for making everything sound like a joke at my expense. He picked up one of my socket wrenches, examined it with exaggerated interest, then set it down with a slight smirk. "These tools look older than me," he said. "Don't you think it's time to upgrade? Get some modern equipment?" "These tools work fine," I replied, not looking up from the engine compartment. "Built to last." "If you say so." Curtis checked his watch, a new Rolex that definitely hadn't been on his wrist last month. "I'm meeting Lorraine for coffee. Business stuff, you know. Numbers and strategy. Probably too complicated for the grease monkey." He laughed as if he'd made a clever joke, then walked away, leaving me alone with my toys and my growing questions about where the money for that Rolex had come from. That afternoon, our trucks were positioned at the downtown city square for the weekly farmers market, our biggest revenue day. I was restocking Truck 1 when I saw Lorraine talking to a group of potential customers near the fountain. She was in her element, charming and professional, explaining our business model to what looked like investors or maybe food industry reporters. "The key to our success," I heard her saying as I approached with a fresh batch of ice cream bars, "is understanding the market, knowing where to position your assets, how to maximize profit margins, when to expand. It takes vision and business acumen." The small crowd nodded appreciatively. One woman, probably a local business reporter, was taking notes. "And you built this company from scratch?" the reporter asked. "Absolutely," Lorraine replied without hesitation. Started with one truck and a dream. Now we're the premier mobile refreshment service in the downtown area. I stood there holding the ice cream bars, waiting for her to mention the technical side, the modifications, the countless nights I'd spent converting vehicles and solving mechanical problems. Instead, she launched into a discussion of profit margins and market positioning. "Excuse me," the reporter said, noticing me. "Are you part of the team?" Before I could answer, Lorraine stepped forward. "This is Warren, our maintenance specialist. He keeps the trucks running." She said it the way you might introduce the janitor. Necessary, but not particularly noteworthy. "Did you help develop the business?" the reporter asked me directly. Lorraine answered before I could speak. "Warren handles the mechanical side. I focus on strategy and growth. Different skill sets, you know." The reporter nodded and turned back to Lorraine, clearly more interested in hearing from the business visionary than the maintenance specialist. I set down the ice cream bars and walked away, feeling invisible and diminished. That evening, I was cleaning up in the garage when I heard voices from the kitchen. Lorraine was on the phone with her parents, and her voice carried through the thin walls of our house. "No, he doesn't understand the big picture," she was saying. "Warren's good with his hands, but business decisions require a different kind of thinking. He's too simple for complex financial planning." I froze, my hand gripping a wrench so tightly my knuckles went white. "Of course the money will keep coming," Lorraine continued. "I control all the accounts. Warren just signs whatever I put in front of him. He trusts me completely." The conversation continued, but I couldn't make out the details. What I could hear clearly was the tone. Dismissive, calculating, and completely devoid of respect for the man who'd built every truck in our fleet from the ground up. Later that night, as I was taking out the trash, I noticed an envelope sticking out of the garbage can beside Lorraine's desk in our small home office. The envelope was torn open, and I could see bank letterhead. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Lorraine handled all our financial correspondence. But something about the way it had been hastily discarded made me curious. I pulled the envelope from the trash and examined the contents. It was a statement from our business checking account, but the numbers didn't make sense. According to this statement, we should have had nearly $40,000 more in the account than what Lorraine had been telling me. The statement showed regular withdrawals of $20,000, marked simply as transfer. My hands were shaking as I folded the statement and slipped it into my pocket. $20,000. Every month. Where was that money going? And why was Lorraine throwing away bank statements instead of filing them properly? As I stood in the darkness of our backyard, listening to the distant hum of traffic and feeling the weight of that bank statement in my pocket, I realized that my marriage and my business were built on lies. The woman who claimed we needed to live simply was moving large amounts of money without my knowledge. The woman who dismissed my contributions in public was apparently making financial decisions that I knew nothing about. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Lorraine slept peacefully beside me. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about truck maintenance schedules or refrigeration problems. I was thinking about $20,000 a month and where it might be going. I was thinking about new Rolex watches and leather jackets and the way Lorraine's family always seemed to have money despite none of them having steady jobs. Most importantly, I was thinking about what I was going to do about it. The next morning, I drove to Brendan McCoy's garage on the outskirts of town. Brendan had been my friend since high school, a straight-talking mechanic who'd helped me convert my first ice cream truck 5 years ago. His shop was cluttered and loud, filled with the sounds of air compressors and impact wrenches, a world away from the polite deceptions of my home life. "Warren!" Brendan looked up from under the hood of a pickup truck, his face breaking into a genuine smile. "What brings you to my humble establishment? Don't tell me one of those fancy ice cream trucks is giving you trouble." "Actually, I need to talk," I said, settling onto a worn stool beside his workbench. "And maybe borrow some money." Brendan's expression shifted to concern. He wiped his hands on a rag and gave me his full attention. "How much are we talking about?" $3,000, just until next week when the payments from the city contract come through." "Done," Brendan said without hesitation, reaching for his checkbook. "But Warren, this is the third time in 6 months. What's going on? I thought the ice cream business was booming." I took a deep breath and told him about the bank statement, the mysterious $20,000 withdrawals, and Lorraine's insistence on controlling all financial access. Brendan listened without interrupting, his face growing darker with each detail. "Warren," he said finally, "that's not normal business accounting. You should have access to your own company's books." "Lorraine says I don't understand the complexities of business finance." "Nonsense." Brendan's voice was flat. "You converted 6 trucks, built custom refrigeration systems, and turned a modest investment into a profitable business. You understand more than enough." As I drove home with Brendan's check in my pocket, I found myself thinking about the early days of our business. It had been my idea, my vision, and definitely my sweat equity that made it happen. Lorraine had contributed some initial capital and handled the paperwork, but the real work, the innovation and problem solving that made us successful, had been mine. I remembered those first months, working 18-hour days to convert our initial truck. I'd researched commercial refrigeration systems, studied city regulations for mobile food vendors, and spent countless nights in the garage solving problems that no manual could teach. Lorraine had helped with permits and licensing, but even then, she'd seemed more interested in the potential profits than the actual work. The business had grown because I'd figured out how to build better trucks than our competitors. My custom modifications allowed us to carry more inventory, maintain better temperature control, and operate in locations where other vendors couldn't function. While other ice cream trucks broke down in the Arizona heat, mine kept running. But somewhere along the way, the narrative had shifted. Lorraine had started taking credit for our success, describing herself as the business strategist while relegating me to maintenance. The truth was, I was the business. Without my technical expertise and constant innovation, we'd be just another failed food service startup. That evening, Lorraine's parents came for dinner. Philip and Maureen Connolly were 70 and 68, respectively, retired from comfortable middle management jobs and living in a house that was worth more than I'd make in 10 years. They'd never approved of their daughter marrying a blue-collar worker, and they made sure I knew it. "Lorraine tells us the business is expanding," Philip said over dinner, addressing his daughter while barely acknowledging my presence. "Smart move, focusing on the financial side rather than getting bogged down in technical details." "Warren does excellent work with the trucks," Maureen added with the kind of faint praise you might give a competent janitor. "It's so important to have reliable help." Reliable help. I was being described as hired assistants in my own home, discussing my own business. "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "I designed and built every system in those trucks. The refrigeration, the storage, the electrical." "Of course, dear," Maureen interrupted with a patronizing smile. "Manual labor is so important. But the real challenge is business strategy. That requires education and sophistication." Lorraine nodded along with her mother's assessment. "Warren's very good at the practical stuff. I handle the complex decisions." After dinner, I was cleaning dishes in the kitchen when I overheard the three of them talking in the living room. Philip's voice carried clearly through the thin walls. "I'm proud of how you've taken control of the business, Lorraine. It would be a shame to let Warren's simple approach limit your potential." "Don't worry about that," Lorraine replied. "I've made sure all the important decisions go through me. Warren just signs what I put in front of him." "And the monthly contributions to the family?" Maureen asked. "That's still working out?" "Perfectly. Warren doesn't even know about them. He thinks we're barely breaking even." My hands stopped moving in the soapy water. Monthly contributions to the family. The $20,000 transfers suddenly made sense. Lorraine wasn't just hiding money from me. She was giving our profits to her parents and brother while I borrowed money from friends to keep the business running. The next day, I drove past Curtis's apartment complex on my way to the bank. His building was in an upscale part of town, the kind of place that required a significant monthly rent. I'd always wondered how he afforded it without steady employment. Now I knew. At the bank, I tried to access our business account records, but was told that only Lorraine had authorization to view detailed statements. I was listed as a secondary account holder with limited access, something I didn't remember agreeing to, but my signature was on file. "I'd like to add full access to my authorization," I told the bank manager. "That would require the primary account holder's approval," she replied. "Mrs. Hollis would need to come in and sign the paperwork." I left the bank feeling frustrated and manipulated. Somehow Lorraine had structured our business accounts to exclude me from financial oversight of my own company. Every month, she was transferring $20,000 to her family while telling me we needed to live simply. That afternoon, I met Everett Gaines for coffee at a quiet cafe downtown. Everett had been our family lawyer for years, handling the initial business incorporation and various legal needs. He was 59, gray-haired, and had a reputation for careful, methodical legal work. "Warren," he said as we settled into a corner booth, "you sounded concerned on the phone. What's going on?" I explained the situation, the hidden transfers, the limited bank access, and my growing suspicion that Lorraine was planning something bigger. Everett listened carefully, taking notes on a legal pad. "Do you have full access to your business documents?" he asked. "Partnership agreements, incorporation papers, tax filings." "Lorraine handles all of that. She says it's too complicated for me to understand." Everett's expression darkened. "Warren, you're a 50% owner of this business. You have every right to see those documents. In fact, you should have copies of everything." What if she's planning to push me out entirely? Then you need to be prepared. Do you have any evidence of your contributions to the business? Documentation of your work, your innovations, your role in building the company? I thought about the hundreds of photos I'd taken during truck conversions, the technical drawings I'd made for custom modifications, and the detailed maintenance logs I kept for each vehicle. Yes, I have plenty of documentation. Good. Keep it safe. And Warren, if Lorraine asks you to sign anything at all, don't do it without having me review it first. As I drove home that evening, I felt a mixture of anger and determination that I hadn't experienced in years. For too long, I'd accepted Lorraine's dismissive treatment and her family's condescension. I'd allowed myself to be marginalized in my own business and my own home, but now I knew the truth about where our money was going, and I had a lawyer who understood the legal implications. That night, as Lorraine worked on her laptop in the living room, I quietly began making copies of every business-related document I could find. Technical drawings, maintenance records, photographs of my work, correspondence with suppliers, anything that demonstrated my central role in building our company. I also started a detailed log of Lorraine's behavior, her dismissive comments, and her family's attitude toward me. If this situation was heading toward a legal confrontation, I wanted to be prepared with evidence that went beyond just financial records. For the first time in months, I felt like I had some control over my situation. Lorraine thought she was dealing with a simple, compliant man who would sign whatever she put in front of him. She was about to discover that she'd underestimated the quiet guy who built her business from the ground up. 2 weeks later, I finally got the proof I needed. I'd developed a routine of checking our business locations throughout the day, ostensibly for maintenance issues, but really to track our actual revenue. I kept detailed notes of customer traffic, sales volumes, and cash collections. When I compared my observations to the financial reports Lorraine showed me, the discrepancies were staggering. We were making nearly 60% more than she claimed. That morning, I drove to the bank with a different strategy. Instead of asking for account access, I requested copies of all business tax filings for the past 2 years. As a business owner, I had a legal right to this information, even if Lorraine controlled the day-to-day banking. The tax documents told the complete story. Our business had generated over $800,000 in profit over the past 2 years. According to Lorraine's reports to me, we'd made less than $300,000. The missing money, over $500,000, had been systematically transferred to accounts belonging to Curtis, Philip, and Maureen Connolly. My hands were shaking as I sat in the bank parking lot, reading through the tax filings. Lorraine hadn't just been skimming money for her family's expenses. She'd been funding their entire lifestyle while I borrowed money from friends to pay business loans. That afternoon, I drove to Curtis's apartment complex with a new perspective. His building featured a doorman, valet parking, and a rooftop pool. The rent for a one-bedroom unit in this building was probably $4,000 a month. Curtis had been living here for over a year, unemployed, driving a new BMW, and wearing expensive clothes. I parked across the street and watched as Curtis emerged from the building around 2 p.m., dressed in golf attire and carrying a set of clubs that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He handed his keys to the valet and drove away in his BMW, heading toward the country club district. This was how my business partner's brother spent his days while I worked 16-hour shifts maintaining the trucks that generated his income. That evening, I decided to confront Lorraine directly. I waited until she finished her evening phone call with her mother, then joined her in the living room with a folder containing copies of the tax documents. "We need to talk about the business finances," I said, settling into the chair across from her. Lorraine looked up from her laptop with that familiar expression of mild irritation. "Warren, I've told you—" "I know about the transfers," I interrupted. $20,000 a month to your family. I've seen the tax filings." For just a moment, Lorraine's composed facade cracked. I saw surprise, then calculation, then a return to her controlled demeanor. "Warren," she said carefully, you don't understand the full picture. There are business expenses, family obligations, complex financial arrangements." "Complex financial arrangements?" My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "You've been giving away half our profits while I borrow money to pay our loans. Your unemployed brother is living in a luxury apartment while I eat peanut butter sandwiches for lunch." Lorraine closed her laptop and fixed me with a cold stare. "This is exactly why I handle the finances, Warren. You think in simple terms. You don't understand business strategy or family responsibilities." "Family responsibilities? What about responsibility to your husband? What about the fact that I built this business with my own hands?" "You built trucks, Warren. I built a business. There's a difference." The dismissiveness in her voice was like a physical blow. After 15 years of marriage and 5 years of building our company together, She still saw me as nothing more than hired help. I want full access to all business accounts, I said. I want to see every transaction, every transfer, every decision you've made with our money. Lorraine's laugh was sharp and humorless. Our money? Warren, you signed documents giving me financial control of this business. You agreed to let me handle complex decisions while you focus on maintenance. I never agreed to let you steal from our company. Steal? Lorraine's voice turned dangerous. I've grown this business beyond anything you could have achieved alone. The money I allocate to family support is an investment in our future stability. Your family's future stability, you mean? My family is your family, Warren. Or have you forgotten that? I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 15 years and realized I didn't know her at all. The person sitting across from me was a stranger, cold, calculating, and completely without remorse for betraying my trust. Things are going to change, I said, standing up. I'm not signing anything else without my lawyer reviewing it first. I want full financial transparency, and I want the family payments to stop. Lorraine's smile was thin and predatory. Warren, you're not thinking clearly. You're upset because you don't understand the bigger picture. Maybe it's time for you to step back and let me handle things entirely. What does that mean? It means maybe you should focus on what you're good at, fixing trucks, and leave the business decisions to someone with the education and sophistication to handle them properly. That night, I lay awake planning my next moves. Lorraine had essentially threatened to push me out of my own business. She'd made it clear that she had no intention of stopping the payments to her family or giving me meaningful input into financial decisions. Most importantly, she'd revealed that she saw me as an obstacle to be managed rather than a partner to be respected. The next morning, I called Everett Gaines and scheduled an emergency meeting. Then I drove to my workshop and began the most important project of my life, documenting every aspect of my contributions to our business and preparing for the legal battle that was coming. I photographed every truck, every custom modification, every innovation I'd developed. I compiled maintenance logs, parts receipts, and technical drawings. I gathered correspondence with suppliers who knew me as the technical expert behind our operation. I documented the countless hours I'd spent solving problems that had made our business successful. Most importantly, I began researching business law, partnership agreements, and financial fraud. If Lorraine thought she was dealing with a simple mechanic who would quietly accept being pushed aside, she was about to learn otherwise. That afternoon, Curtis stopped by the workshop. He seemed more arrogant than usual, strutting around my garage like he owned it. Lorraine tells me you're having some concerns about the business, he said, picking up one of my tools and examining it with exaggerated interest. Maybe it's time you considered retirement. You know, step back and let the smart money take over. Smart money? Face it, Warren. You're good with your hands, but business requires a different kind of intelligence. Lorraine's got vision. You've got grease under your fingernails. Curtis laughed at his own joke, then continued. Besides, the family has plans for expanding this operation. Plans that require sophisticated financial management, not just truck maintenance. The family has plans? Of course. This business has potential beyond anything you've imagined, but it needs proper leadership, professional management, not some guy who thinks success means keeping the refrigeration running. As Curtis walked away, still chuckling, I realized that Lorraine's betrayal was bigger than just monthly payments to her family. They were planning to take over the entire business, pushing me out and treating my life's work as their personal ATM. That evening, Lorraine came home late again, claiming she'd been meeting with potential investors. She seemed unusually confident, almost cheerful, as she poured herself a glass of wine and settled at the dining room table. Warren, she said, I have some documents that need your signature, just routine business paperwork. She slid a thick folder across the table, her expression pleasant and expectant. The papers inside looked official. Corporate letterhead, legal language, multiple signature lines. What are these for? I asked, not touching the documents. Partnership restructuring, updating our business organization to reflect current realities. You know, formalizing the division of responsibilities we've already established. I looked at Lorraine's face, noting the carefully controlled expression that didn't quite hide her anticipation. This was it, the moment she'd been building toward. Whatever was in these documents, it represented her plan to eliminate me from meaningful involvement in my own business. I'll need time to review these with my lawyer, I said. Lorraine's smile faltered slightly. Warren, these are routine documents. Nothing complicated. Just sign them so we can move forward. I'm not signing anything without legal review. Warren, her voice carried a warning. You're being paranoid. These documents protect both of us. They clarify our roles and ensure the business continues to grow. I looked at the woman across the table, my wife of 15 years, the mother of my son, the person I'd trusted with my dreams and my future. She was asking me to sign away my life's work, and she expected me to do it without question because she'd convinced herself I was too simple to understand what was happening. I'll have Everett review them tomorrow, I said, closing the folder. Lorraine's mask slipped completely. Fine, she said coldly. But don't take too long, Warren. Business doesn't wait for people who can't keep up. As she walked away, I sat alone at the dining room table, holding documents that I was certain would reveal the full scope of her betrayal. But I wasn't the same man who had meekly accepted her dismissiveness for years. I had evidence, I had legal counsel, and I had a plan. Lorraine thought she was dealing with someone who would sign whatever she put in front of him. Tomorrow, she would discover that the quiet mechanic had been preparing for this moment, and her family's free ride was about to end. The next morning, I sat in Everett Gaines's office as he reviewed the documents Lorraine had given me. His expression grew increasingly grave as he turned each page, occasionally making notes on his legal pad. Warren, he said finally, these documents would transfer majority control of your business to Lorraine. You'd retain a 25% stake and a salary as technical manager, but you'd have no voting rights on major decisions. What does that mean in practical terms? It means she could sell the business, take on partners, or make any financial decision she wanted without your consent. You'd essentially be an employee of your own company. I felt a cold rage building in my chest. Can she do this legally? Only if you sign. But Warren, there's something else. These documents contain a clause that would retroactively authorize all previous financial decisions, including those transfers to her family. If you sign this, you'd be legally approving everything she's done. Everett leaned back in his chair, studying my face. She's not just trying to take control of your business. She's trying to make her previous actions legal and permanent. What are my options? Well, first, don't sign anything. Second, we need to document your actual contributions to the business. And third, we should consider filing for divorce and demanding a full accounting of marital assets. Divorce? Warren, your wife has been systematically stealing from your business and planning to push you out entirely. This isn't a marriage problem, it's financial fraud. That afternoon, I called my son Tyler at college in Colorado. Tyler was 21, studying engineering, and had always been proud of our family business. He deserved to know the truth about what was happening. Dad? Tyler's voice was concerned. You sound upset? Is everything okay? I explained everything, the hidden transfers, the luxury lifestyle Lorraine's family was living on our business profits, and the documents she wanted me to sign. Tyler listened without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification. Dad, that's stealing. Mom is stealing from you. I wanted you to hear it from me before things get complicated. Your mother and I are probably going to divorce, and there's going to be a legal battle over the business. Dad, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I always thought Mom handled the business side because she was good at it, not because she was... Jesus, Dad, Uncle Curtis bought a new car last month. A BMW. He posted pictures on social media. Bought with money from our business, while I borrowed money from Brendan to pay our loans. This is so messed up. Tyler's voice was angry now. Dad, what can I do? How can I help? Just know that I tried to make this work. I tried to be a good husband and partner, but I can't let them steal my life's work. Dad, you built that business. Everyone knows that. Mom might handle paperwork, but you're the one who made those trucks work. You're the one who figured out how to compete with the big companies. After the call, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. My son understood the truth, and he supported me. Whatever happened next, I wouldn't be facing it alone. That evening, I began the most important documentation project of my life. I organized every piece of evidence that demonstrated my role in building our business. Photographs of truck conversions, technical drawings, maintenance logs, supplier correspondence, and customer testimonials praising our equipment reliability. I also compiled a detailed timeline of Lorraine's behavior over the past 2 years, her increasing dismissiveness, her family's growing arrogance, and the pattern of financial secrecy that had culminated in the documents she wanted me to sign. Most importantly, I began preparing my own legal documents. With Everett's help, I drafted a comprehensive filing that would demand full business accounting, challenge the validity of previous financial transfers, and seek divorce with equitable distribution of marital assets. The next day, Lorraine asked about the documents again. Have you had a chance to review the paperwork? She asked over breakfast, her tone casual but her eyes watchful. Still reviewing, I said. Everett wants to make sure I understand all the implications. Warren, you're overthinking this. These are standard business documents, the kind of thing successful companies do to formalize their structure. If they're so standard, you won't mind waiting until I'm completely comfortable with them? Lorraine's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Fine, but don't take forever. We have opportunities that require quick decision-making. What opportunities? Potential investors, people who are interested in our business model but want to see professional management structure before they commit. I nodded as if I believed her, but I suspected these investors were probably her family members looking to formalize their control over my business. That afternoon, I made copies of every document in our home office, including files Lorraine thought were private. I also installed a small recording device in the kitchen, hoping to capture more conversations like the one I'd overheard with her parents. The recordings proved illuminating. That evening, Lorraine called her brother to discuss my resistance to signing the documents. "He's being stubborn," she said. "I thought he'd just sign like he always does, but he's involving his lawyer." "Can the lawyer cause problems?" Curtis asked. "Not if we move quickly. Once Warren signs the restructuring documents, his lawyer won't be able to challenge anything. Warren will be locked into his new role, and the family payments will be legally protected." "What if he refuses to sign?" "Then we move to Plan B. I file for divorce, claim he's been mismanaging the business, and seek court-ordered restructuring to protect company assets." I listened to this conversation with a mixture of fury and satisfaction. Fury at the depth of their betrayal, but satisfaction at finally understanding their complete strategy. They'd planned for every contingency except one, the possibility that the quiet mechanic had been preparing his own plan. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse and filed preliminary paperwork for divorce and business asset protection. I also filed a motion for immediate accounting of all business finances and a temporary restraining order preventing any major financial decisions without court approval. Everett had advised me to move quickly once I decided to act. "The element of surprise is crucial," he'd said. "If Lorraine realizes you're taking legal action, she might try to move money or destroy documents." That afternoon, I received a call from Brendan. "Warren, I just wanted you to know, whatever happens with this business situation, you've got my support. You're one of the most decent guys I know, and you don't deserve what's happening to you." "Thanks, Brendan. That means a lot. Also, I've been thinking. If you end up starting over, I'd be interested in partnering with you. Your technical skills and my mechanical expertise, we could build something good together." For the first time in months, I felt hopeful about the future. Even if I lost everything in the divorce, I had friends who believed in me and a son who supported me. I had skills and experience that couldn't be taken away, no matter what legal documents Lorraine tried to force me to sign. That evening, Lorraine came home with a bottle of champagne and an unusually cheerful demeanor. "I have good news," she announced. "The investors I've been talking to are ready to move forward. They want to meet next week to finalize everything." "What investors?" "A restaurant group that's interested in expanding into mobile food service. They see the potential in our model and want to invest in significant expansion." I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the simple husband who didn't understand complex business deals. But I knew the truth. These investors were probably her family members or business associates who were part of her plan to formalize control over my company. "That sounds exciting," I said. "What would that mean for us?" "Financial security, Warren. Real money. The kind of success that would set us up for life." "And what would my role be in this expanded business?" "You'd continue doing what you do best, maintaining equipment and handling technical issues. The investors would bring professional management and growth capital." Professional management. Another way of saying that I'd be pushed aside while other people profited from my innovations and hard work. "When do I get to meet these investors?" I asked. "Next week. We're having a formal presentation where we'll finalize all the partnership agreements." I smiled and congratulated her on her business acumen, but inside I was calculating timing. Next week would be too late for her plans. By then, the court orders would be in place, and her investors would discover that the business assets were frozen pending legal resolution. That night, as Lorraine slept beside me, I reviewed my legal strategy one final time. I had documented evidence of financial fraud, a clear timeline of her attempts to marginalize me, and legal filings that would protect my interests. Most importantly, I had maintained the element of surprise. Lorraine thought she was dealing with a simple man who could be manipulated and discarded. Next week, she would discover that she'd underestimated the quiet guy who built her business empire, and that her family's comfortable lifestyle was about to disappear forever. Monday morning, I arrived at the courthouse early to finalize the legal filings that would change everything. Everett met me at the clerk's office with a briefcase full of documents we'd spent the weekend preparing. "Are you ready for this, Warren?" he asked as we walked toward the filing window. "Once we submit these papers, there's no going back." "I'm ready," I said, and I meant it. After months of being dismissed, marginalized, and stolen from, I was finally taking action. The filing included a petition for divorce, a motion for immediate business asset accounting, a request for temporary restraining orders on all major financial transactions, and most importantly, a detailed complaint alleging financial fraud and seeking restitution for the money transferred to Lorraine's family. The restraining order will freeze all business accounts as of this afternoon, Everett explained as we completed the paperwork. Lorraine won't be able to make any transfers or major financial decisions without court approval. What about the meeting with her supposed investors? That's going to be very interesting. If these people are legitimate investors, they'll understand the legal complications. If they're part of Lorraine's scheme to formalize control, they're going to be very surprised. That afternoon, I went about my normal routine, maintaining trucks and handling customer service issues. But I felt different. Lighter, more confident, like I'd finally stopped carrying a weight I didn't even realize was crushing me. Around 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was Lorraine, and her voice was tight with controlled anger. "Warren, I just received a very disturbing call from our bank. They're saying there's some kind of legal hold on our business accounts. Do you know anything about this?" "A legal hold? That sounds serious. What did they say?" "They said there's a court order preventing any major transactions pending some kind of investigation. Warren, this could ruin the investor meeting tomorrow." "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," I said, playing my role perfectly. "Maybe you should call Everett and see if he can help sort it out." "I'm calling my own lawyer," Lorraine said sharply. "This is obviously some kind of administrative error, but it needs to be fixed immediately." That evening, Lorraine was on the phone for hours, talking to lawyers, bank officials, and presumably her family. I could hear the growing panic in her voice as she realized the scope of the legal action. Around 10 p.m., she confronted me directly. "Warren, did you file some kind of legal action against our business?" "Me? I'm just the maintenance guy, remember? I don't understand complex legal matters." "Don't play games with me. My lawyer says someone filed for business asset protection and financial accounting. That someone has to be you." "Lorraine, I think it's time we had an honest conversation about our marriage and our business, but maybe we should wait until tomorrow when we can discuss everything calmly." Her eyes narrowed. "Tomorrow is the investor meeting, the most important business meeting we've ever had. If you've done something to sabotage that—" "I haven't sabotaged anything. I've just made sure that any major business decisions involve both partners equally." That night, I heard Lorraine on the phone with Curtis and her parents, her voice rising as she explained the legal complications. The conversation grew heated, with accusations and blame flying in all directions. "This is supposed to be handled by now," I heard Curtis saying. "Warren was supposed to sign the documents weeks ago." "He's being advised by that lawyer," Lorraine replied. "But don't worry. Tomorrow's meeting will proceed as planned. We'll deal with Warren's legal tantrum afterward." The next morning, Lorraine left early for what she called preliminary meetings with the investment team. She was dressed in her most professional outfit and carrying a briefcase full of documents that I suspected were designed to formalize her control over my business. Around noon, Tyler called from college. "Dad, I've been thinking about everything you told me. I want you to know that I support you completely. What Mom did, stealing from the business, lying to you, planning to push you out, that's unforgivable." "Tyler, I know this is hard. She's your mother, and I don't want you to feel like you have to choose sides." "Dad, there are no sides here. There's right and wrong. What Mom did is wrong, and you have every right to protect yourself and your business." That afternoon, Everett called with an update. "Lorraine's lawyer contacted me this morning. They want to schedule mediation to resolve the misunderstanding about business ownership and financial management." "What did you tell them?" "I told them we'd be happy to mediate, but only after we receive complete financial accounting for the past 3 years and full documentation of all business transactions." "How did they respond?" "They agreed to mediation for tomorrow afternoon. Warren, I think they're realizing that their legal position isn't as strong as they thought." That evening, Lorraine came home looking defeated and angry. The investor meeting had apparently not gone as planned. "The investors are concerned about the legal complications," she said, pouring herself a large glass of wine. "They want to postpone any decisions until the business ownership issues are resolved." "That seems reasonable," I said. "Business partnerships should be clearly defined." "Warren, what do you want? What's this really about?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized that she still didn't understand what she'd done wrong. In her mind, she was the victim of my unreasonable legal action, not the perpetrator of months of financial fraud and emotional manipulation. "I want honesty, Lorraine. I want respect. I want to be treated as an equal partner in the business I built." "You are an equal partner. Equal partners don't steal from each other. Equal partners don't plan to push each other out of the business. Equal partners don't give away company profits to their families while their spouse borrows money to pay business loans." Lorraine's face flushed with anger. I never stole anything. I made strategic financial decisions that you were too unsophisticated to understand. Strategic financial decisions like buying your brother a BMW and paying for your parents' country club membership? Those are family investments. Those are theft, Lorraine. And tomorrow, in mediation, you're going to have to explain every one of those family investments to a mediator and my lawyer. That night, I packed a bag and moved into the guest bedroom. I also made final preparations for tomorrow's mediation, organizing every piece of evidence that demonstrated my role in building our business and documenting every fraudulent transfer Lorraine had made. I called Brendan to let him know what was happening. Tomorrow's the day, I told him. Either we resolve this fairly or it goes to court. Warren, whatever happens, you've done the right thing. You can't let people steal from you and expect you to be grateful for it. As I lay in the guest bedroom, listening to Lorraine on the phone with her family, I felt a calm determination I hadn't experienced in years. Tomorrow, the truth would come out. Tomorrow, Lorraine and her family would face the consequences of their greed and manipulation. Most importantly, tomorrow, the quiet mechanic they dismissed and underestimated would show them exactly how much he understood about business, law, and justice. The mediation was scheduled for 2 p.m. at a downtown law office. I arrived early with Everett, carrying a thick file containing every piece of evidence we'd compiled over the past month. The conference room was sterile and professional, with a long table and windows overlooking the city, where my ice cream trucks had generated the profits that Lorraine's family had been stealing. Lorraine arrived with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Vance, who specialized in business law. Behind them came Curtis, Philip, and Maureen Connolly. They entered the room with the confident demeanor of people who expected to formalize their control over my life's work. The mediator, Robert Chen, was a retired judge with decades of experience in business disputes. He reviewed the basic facts of our case, then turned to Lorraine's lawyer. Ms. Vance, your clients are seeking to resolve what they describe as a misunderstanding about business management and financial authority. Would you like to present your position first? Patricia Vance opened her briefcase with practiced efficiency. Your Honor, this dispute stems from Mr. Hollis's misunderstanding of the business structure he and his wife established 5 years ago. Mrs. Hollis has been serving as the financial manager of their ice cream truck business, making strategic decisions about profit allocation and business development. She slid a document across the table. These are the partnership agreements that clearly establish Mrs. Hollis's authority over financial decisions. Mr. Hollis signed these documents and has been operating under this structure for years. I glanced at the documents, recognizing my signature on papers I'd signed without careful review, trusting my wife to handle complex business matters while I focused on the technical work. Mrs. Hollis has been allocating profits to family members as part of a comprehensive business strategy, Vance continued. These payments represent investments in future business expansion and family financial stability. Mr. Hollis's recent legal action stems from his lack of understanding about sophisticated business planning. Curtis leaned back in his chair with a smug expression, while Philip and Maureen nodded along with the lawyer's presentation. They clearly expected this mediation to end with my capitulation and their continued access to my business profits. Mr. Gaines, the mediator said, would you like to respond? Everett stood and opened our file with deliberate ceremony. Your Honor, we're not here to discuss sophisticated business planning. We're here to address systematic financial fraud and attempted theft of business assets. He placed the first document on the table, a detailed accounting of every transfer Lorraine had made to her family over the past 3 years. Mrs. Hollis has transferred over $600,000 from the business account to her family members without Mr. Hollis's knowledge or consent. These transfers occurred while Mr. Hollis was borrowing money from friends to pay business loans. Lorraine's confident expression began to waver as Everett continued. Furthermore, Mrs. Hollis attempted to trick Mr. Hollis into signing documents that would have retroactively authorized these transfers and stripped him of meaningful control over the business he built. Everett placed a second set of documents on the table, photographs of every truck conversion, technical drawings, maintenance logs, and customer testimonials. Mr. Hollis didn't just contribute to this business, Your Honor. He is this business. Every truck was personally converted by him. Every technical innovation came from his expertise. Every competitive advantage stems from his mechanical knowledge and problem-solving ability. The room had grown quiet. Curtis's smug expression was gone, replaced by growing concern. Philip and Maureen exchanged worried glances. But the most damning evidence, Everett continued, is this. He placed a small recording device on the table and pressed play. Lorraine's voice filled the room, crystal clear. Once Warren signs the restructuring documents, his lawyer won't be able to challenge anything. Warren will be locked into his new role, and the family payments will be legally protected. Then Curtis's voice. What if he refuses to sign? And Lorraine again. Then we move to Plan B. I file for divorce, claim he's been mismanaging the business, and seek court-ordered restructuring to protect company assets. The silence that followed was deafening. Lorraine's face had gone pale, while her family members stared at the recording device as if it were a bomb that had just exploded in their faces. Your Honor, Everett said calmly, this recording demonstrates that Mrs. Hollis and her family have been engaged in a deliberate conspiracy to defraud Mr. Hollis of his business assets. They plan to either trick him into signing away his rights or use false legal claims to steal his company. Patricia Vance was frantically whispering with Lorraine, clearly realizing that their legal position had just collapsed entirely. There's more. Everett continued, placing additional documents on the table. Mr. Hollis has filed for divorce and is seeking full restitution of the stolen funds. He's also filing criminal complaints for financial fraud and business conspiracy. Criminal complaints? Curtis's voice cracked slightly. $600,000 in fraudulent transfers constitutes felony theft in this state, Everett replied. The conspiracy to defraud a business partner carries additional penalties. I watched the faces around the table as the reality of their situation sank in. These people had spent years treating me like a simple-minded mechanic who could be manipulated and discarded. They'd lived luxurious lifestyles on money stolen from my business while I struggled to pay basic expenses. Your Honor, I said, speaking for the first time since the mediation began, I built this business from nothing. I converted every truck with my own hands. I solved every technical problem. I worked 16-hour days while my wife's family lived off the profits and mocked my contributions. I stood up, feeling a calm strength I'd never experienced before. I trusted my wife to handle financial matters because I believed we were partners. Instead, she systematically stole from our business and planned to push me out entirely. Her family treated me like hired help while spending money I earned. Curtis tried to interrupt. Warren, you don't understand the complexities. I understand theft, I said, cutting him off. I understand fraud. I understand that you've been living in a luxury apartment, driving a BMW, and playing golf at country clubs with money stolen from my business. I turned to Philip and Maureen. I understand that you've been accepting $20,000 a month from your daughter while looking down on me as unsophisticated and simple. Finally, I looked directly at Lorraine. And I understand that the woman I married and trusted has been planning to steal my life's work while pretending to love me. The mediator reviewed our evidence for several minutes, then delivered his preliminary assessment. Based on the documentation presented, it appears that Mrs. Hollis has engaged in unauthorized transfer of business assets and attempted fraud. The criminal implications of these actions fall outside the scope of mediation. He turned to Lorraine's lawyer. Ms. Vance, do your clients wish to negotiate restitution and asset division, or shall we refer this matter to criminal court? Patricia Vance huddled with her clients for several minutes. I could hear urgent whispers and growing panic as they realized their scheme had not only failed, but exposed them to serious legal consequences. Your Honor, Vance said finally, my clients are prepared to discuss restitution and business asset division. Excellent. Mr. Hollis, what are your terms? Everett consulted his notes. Full restitution of stolen funds, $600,000 plus interest. Immediate cessation of all transfers to family members. Divorce with equitable distribution of remaining assets, and formal acknowledgement that Mr. Hollis is the primary owner and operator of the business. Curtis's face had turned red. This is ridiculous. We're family. Warren, you can't destroy your wife's family over a business disagreement. I looked at this man who had spent years mocking my work while living off my profits, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Curtis, you're not my family. You're a thief who has been stealing from my business for 3 years. The only reason you're not in jail right now is because I'm giving you the chance to make restitution. Maureen spoke up, her voice shaking. Warren, surely we can work something out. We never meant any harm. We thought Lorraine was handling legitimate business expenses. You thought wrong, I replied. And your country club memberships, luxury cars, and expensive vacations are about to end. The mediation continued for another hour, but the outcome was inevitable. Faced with documented evidence of fraud and the threat of criminal prosecution, Lorraine's family agreed to full restitution and permanent cessation of all business involvement. As the final papers were signed, I watched the faces of people who had dismissed me for years. Curtis would have to sell his BMW and move out of his luxury apartment. Philip and Maureen would lose their country club lifestyle and face the humiliation of explaining to their friends why their income had suddenly disappeared. Most importantly, Lorraine would lose control of the business she'd tried to steal and face the consequences of betraying the man who had built her comfortable life. The mediator was finalizing the asset freeze paperwork when Lorraine finally realized the full scope of what was happening. The monthly payments to her family were gone forever. Her control over the business was terminated. Her plan to push me out had not only failed, but resulted in her own expulsion from the company. "Warren, you can't do this," she screamed, her composed facade finally cracking completely. "I built this business too. I handled the finances, the legal work, the customer relations. You can't just take everything." I looked at this woman who had stolen from me, lied to me, and planned to destroy me, and I felt nothing but cold justice. "Lorraine, you handled the finances by stealing $600,000. You handled the legal work by trying to defraud me of my business. You handled customer relations by taking credit for work you never did." Her scream echoed through the conference room as the mediator stamped the final documents, officially freezing all business assets and ending her family's theft of my life's work.